So what is the solution? It's great to say we have authority. Let's fix the problem. How, right? That's the obvious question. How do you fix this problem? All right. Well, Convention states action. Our mission is to build an engaged army of self-governing grassroots activists. Why? Because the reason we're in this trouble that we're in right now, the reason our nation is a mess is because for a very long time, we as a whole have not been engaged. Yes, I'm sure there are people out there that have been engaged. If you are one of them, good on you. I can't say the same thing. I am one of the people that had to start being engaged. If you are like me, I'm going to give you some tools today to help you know how to get engaged. But ultimately, in our nation, we as a whole need to re-engage. That is what's going to fix this problem. Our aspirational goal is to inspire a political and spiritual awakening in America. Why? Because if we had spent more time on our knees and then getting up and doing something, we would not be in the situation that we are in today. Article 5 is where we have our answer. Article 5 gives us the peaceful solution to our problem, peaceful and legal. Article 5 is the part of the Constitution that dictates how amendments can be made to the Constitution. And don't get me wrong, the founders intended for there to be amendments to the Constitution from the very beginning. Don't forget that the Bill of Rights itself was an amendment. It was 10 of them, actually. Okay? Amendments were supposed to happen. So they said how we could get our amendments. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of the Constitution, when ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states, or by conventions and 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress. Now we could break that down, because if this is the first time you've ever seen Article 5, you might be going, say what? That's probably what I did the first time I looked at it. So let's break it down. What this is saying is that there are two paths to amend the Constitution, two ways you can do it. And there's an important reason why there's two ways, and we will talk about that. The two ways to amend the Constitution are: one, U.S. Congress can introduce, debate, and vote on an amendment. That amendment will then be officially proposed. Okay, so when we say U.S. Congress, we're talking about Washington, D.C. That means the House has to introduce, debate, and vote on it, and the Senate has to introduce, debate, and vote on it. And if they both agree, and 2/3 of both of them agree, then that amendment is officially proposed, not passed. Congress cannot amend the Constitution. All they can do is propose an amendment. That proposed amendment then goes to the state legislatures, all 50 of them. Those state legislatures then vote. If 38 of the state legislatures, that is the 3/4 required, 38 state legislatures all say, yes, we like this amendment, then the U.S. Constitution is officially amended. What's the second method? Well, actually, let me back up a minute. This is great. This is efficient. What's the problem with this method? The problem with this method is that the only people who get to have input are the federal government. The federal government is pretty far removed from you and me. I don't know about you, but I don't talk to the person who's representing me in Washington, D.C. all that often. That's a long ways out, and they don't come home very often. So, or at least if they do, they don't come and talk to me, right? You try to get them on the phone, that's not going to be easy. These people in the federal government, they don't talk to us very often. They're really far removed from us, and they have an interest in maintaining any power that they have. And that is the reason why the founders put a second method into the Constitution, because they had a conversation when they were writing up the Constitution. And what came out of that conversation was the question, do we really think that if the federal government steals power it's not supposed to have, that it will ever propose to give that power back? And the answer was no. They had just fought Britain. They knew that a tyrant never wants to give power back. It was a unanimous agreement to add a second method, therefore, to the Constitution for proposing amendments. Second method. 2/3 of the state legislatures can pass a resolution to call for a convention to propose amendments. All right. So what's different? Instead of Congress proposing the amendment, it is the state legislatures that say, hey, we want to get together and propose an amendment, something that is coming from us, not from the federal government. This is important because they can propose things that they want to impose on the federal government that the federal government is never going to propose to impose on itself. Propose to impose. That's too much O's. Let's keep going. All right. So if 2/3 of the of the state legislatures pass a resolution calling for a convention, the convention is officially called. Each of the 50 states will send commissioners to this convention. At the convention, they will introduce, debate, and vote on amendments, same as Congress would do. If the majority of the states present like the amendments, those amendments are officially proposed. Again, important to note, the convention cannot amend the Constitution any more than Congress can. All it does is propose amendments. Those proposed amendments are then sent back to all 50 state legislatures, who then vote on those amendments. If 3/4, again, 38 states, a very high bar, like any given amendment, they are then added to the Constitution. The Constitution is considered amended. All right, so those are our two paths to amending the U.S. Constitution. What does this look like in practice? That's the big question. All right, so what this looks like is you and me getting out there and talking to our legislatures. Okay, we have to go talk to the people representing us and say, we want you to, in our state legislature, support passing the Convention of States resolution, calling for a Convention of States. Once we do this and we get a sponsor in both the House and the Senate, and I'm not talking about in Washington, D.C., I'm talking about in Michigan, it would be Lansing, the Michigan House and the Michigan Senate, right here close to home. We need people in the Michigan House and Senate to say, we're sponsoring this resolution. Once people sponsor in both the House and the Senate, it can get voted on. If both the House and the Senate in Michigan pass it, we are considered officially passed. Once 34 states officially pass the Convention of States resolution, a convention will be called. At the convention itself, states from all 50 states will send commissioners. Each state will get one vote on proposed amendments. Amendments will be proposed. Each state will have one vote to decide whether or not it's a good amendment. If at least 50%, you need a majority of those present, like any given proposed amendment, it will be officially proposed. Those proposed amendments will be then sent back to all 50 state legislatures. If they are ratified by 38 state legislatures, the Constitution will officially be amended. If you have any questions about this, please start putting them in the chat. I'd be happy to address them. All right. So what are we doing with Convention of States specifically? Convention of States is trying to pass the same resolution in every single state. This is important for a very specific reason. In our country's history, over 300 resolutions calling for an Article 5 convention have been passed. But we've never had a convention. Why is that? The reason isn't that it isn't a valid method for having a convention, for proposing amendments. It's that we've never had 2/3 of the states in the Union agree on a specific topic to propose amendments on. So we have a lot of different topics that have been brought up throughout history. And we even have a collection of those. If you want to go to our Convention of States Michigan website, you can see the different amendments that have been passed. Excuse me, not amendments that have been passed, the different resolutions that have been passed calling for a convention of states and on the variety of different topics. Thank you, Robin, for putting that up. Sorry, brain freeze for a second here. It will come back. Anyhow, so we've had all of these resolutions passed. We've never had a convention of states because we do not have 2/3 of the states agreeing. We want to have a convention to propose this specific kind of amendment, and that is a requirement. We have to have 2/3 of the states in agreement. So convention of states is having the same application passed by all the states that we pass. What does that application actually say, right? That is the big thing. All right, here you go. The legislature of the state of, in our case, Michigan, hereby applies to Congress under the provisions of Article 5 of the Constitution of the United States for the calling of a convention of the states, limited to proposing amendments to the Constitution of the United States that impose fiscal restraints to the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials and for members of Congress. All right? 3 topic areas. We're calling for a convention limited to proposing amendments, can't pass them, can't ratify them, only propose in these 3 topic areas. Fiscal restraints to deal with our debt and spending, limiting the power and jurisdiction to deal with federal overreach, and limiting the terms of office to deal with our career politicians and bureaucrats. So how's it going? We have voter support on these issues and for doing this across the board. This is not a Republican or Democrat issue. This is an American issue. Currently, we have passed 19 states. If you look at this map, all the green states are passed, meaning that their state legislature, both the House and the Senate, have officially passed our resolution, and they have submitted to Congress calling for an Article 5 convention for these 3 topic areas. The yellow states have passed in one chamber within this particular legislative session, and the blue states are still working on or actively have legislation going. This map is accurate as to February. I believe we have a few more blue states